Ryan's office revenge. They fired me with an email. Not even a phone call. After 18 years of fixing their disasters, staying late when their servers crashed on Christmas Eve, and training every junior developer who walked through those doors, I got a form letter at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Your services are no longer required effective immediately. I'm Jordan Mitchell, 49 years old. And that email just became the biggest mistake TechFlow Systems ever made. See, I spent 6 years in the Air Force before getting into tech. You learn things in the military that corporate America never teaches. Patience, planning, how to keep your mouth shut until you're ready to strike. Most important lesson, always have an exit strategy, even when things look good. I was sitting in my apartment that Tuesday night, staring at the rejection emails piling up in my inbox. Overqualified. Cultural fit concerns. Corporate speak for you're too old and too expensive. At 49, the tech world treats you like expired milk. Doesn't matter that you built half the systems they're running on. My laptop was getting hot on my legs. Same beat-up ThinkPad I'd been using for years. Screen was showing another job board, another list of companies wanting rockstar developers with 10 years of experience in programming languages that existed for 3. They wanted to pay an equity and call it a privilege. I closed the browser tab. My head was pounding. 4 weeks since they cut me loose, and my bank account was looking scary. Rent due in 6 days, and I'm eating generic cereal for dinner. That's when my phone buzzed. News alert from TechCrunch. TechFlow Systems' $280 million merger stalled amid due diligence crisis. I sat up straight. TechFlow, my old company. The deal that CEO Scott Patterson had been bragging about for months. The golden parachute that was supposed to make him the next Silicon Valley success story. Something was wrong with their intellectual property. The buyer was having second thoughts. I clicked through to read the full article. Unexpected complications in core IP rights disputes. Deal on indefinite hold. Vortex Solutions. Conducting additional technical review. My phone buzzed again. Text message from Kevin, one of the junior developers I'd trained 2 years ago. Good kid. Actually asked questions instead of just copying code. Jordan, are you seeing this? They're losing their minds over here. HR is running around like crazy. It's something about the legacy stack. The original platform code. Call me. The original platform code. I put the phone down and stared at nothing for a minute. Why would a $280 million merger stumble over code I wrote years ago? Code that was stable. Code that was the foundation of their entire operation. I got up and walked to my desk. Started digging through old papers, looking for something specific. Had to move a stack of bills I couldn't pay, and some printed rejection letters I kept for reasons I couldn't explain. Found what I was looking for in the bottom drawer. Gray external hard drive. Dusty as hell. Back when I first started at TechFlow, before they got paranoid about security, we all kept local copies of the codebase, easier for compiling, better for offline work. I plugged it into my laptop. The drive made a grinding noise but came to life. Opened up the terminal and navigated to the old project files. There it was, the adaptive load distribution module I'd built 7 years ago. The thing that let TechFlow scale without crashing every time they got more than 100 users. The code looked clean, professional, well commented because I was obsessive about documentation back then. Everything seemed normal, standard enterprise architecture, nothing that should stop a merger. Then I remembered the conversation with Anthony Rodriguez. Anthony was 68 now, retired, but 7 years ago he was the sharpest systems engineer I knew. Old IBM guy who'd seen every corporate trick in the book. Jordan, he'd said, pulling me aside after another all-hands meeting where management took credit. For our work, you wrote that load balancer on your own time, right? On your personal machine? I had. Spent a weekend building the core logic that would eventually become TechFlow's secret sauce. Worked on it at home because the office computers were garbage. "There's something you need to know," Anthony had continued. "Look at your contract dates. You wrote this as a freelancer before they brought you on full-time. There's a gap in the paperwork." He'd pulled out a manila folder, showed me the fine print in my original agreement. Any intellectual property created by contractor on personal equipment outside billable hours remains contractor property until formally assigned. You need to file a patent. Now. I thought he was being paranoid, but I respected Anthony. So I filed the paperwork, paid the fees out of my own pocket, mailed it off to the USPTO and forgot about it. Life moved on. Anthony retired. Scott Patterson took over as CEO when the founder stepped down. I got promoted to lead systems architect. The patent paperwork disappeared into some government database. Until tonight, I started searching through my old files, looking for the patent confirmation. Had to be somewhere. Found it buried in a folder marked Legal Stuff. A letter from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Patent number 8532991. Adaptive load distribution in decentralized modular architectures. Inventor: Jordan Mitchell. Status: granted. Not assigned to TechFlow Systems. Not assigned to any company. Just me. Scott Patterson had just tried to sell a car he didn't own. I stared at that patent document for about 10 minutes straight. Patent number 8,532,991. My name. My invention. Not TechFlow's. Scott Patterson was trying to sell Vortex Solutions, a company built on technology he didn't own. The adaptive load distribution system wasn't just some minor feature. It was the entire backbone of their platform. Without it, TechFlow was just another startup with a fancy office and a CEO who used buzzwords instead of actual plans. I didn't call Kevin back, not yet. If TechFlow was burning down, I wasn't going to hand them a fire extinguisher, not after they threw me out like garbage. Instead, I called Anthony Rodriguez. It was 11 p.m., but Anthony never slept much since his wife died 2 years ago. He picked up on the second ring. "Jordan, you sound different. What happened?" "The house finally caught fire, Anthony." There was a pause, then a dry chuckle. "Good. Let it burn a little longer. I'm sending you something right now. Don't open it until tomorrow morning. Get some sleep first. You're going to need it." The email arrived at 4 a.m. Anthony had spent the last 7 years documenting everything. Every architectural decision TechFlow made after I wrote that load balancer. Every feature they built on top of my code. Every client pitch where they bragged about their proprietary scaling technology. 23 PDF files showing how they'd constructed their entire business model around my weekend project. They hadn't just used my code, they'd made it the foundation of a $280 million company. And they'd never bothered to check who actually owned it. I made coffee and read through everything. Anthony had been thorough. Screenshots of code repositories. Email chains where engineers discussed Jordan's load balancer like it was a company asset. Sales presentations highlighting the TechFlow advantage in system performance. My phone rang at 8 a.m. Unknown number with a San Francisco area code. "Mr. Mitchell? This is Patricia Wells from Hartley, Brennan & Associates. We represent TechFlow Systems regarding certain intellectual property matters. We'd like to schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience. Lawyers." Scott was moving fast. "What kind of meeting?" I asked. "Simply to clarify some paperwork regarding patent assignments from your tenure at TechFlow." "Nothing complex. We're hoping to resolve this quickly and amicably." "Amicably." "Right. They wanted to corner me in a conference room and pressure me into signing away my rights for whatever they thought I was worth. I'll need to review the matter with my attorney," I said. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think that's necessary. This is really just a formality. We have your IP agreement on file, and we're confident this is simply a clerical oversight. Then you won't mind if my lawyer looks at it too." The line went quiet for a few seconds. "Of course. We'll send over the relevant documents for review. But Mr. Mitchell, I should mention, TechFlow is under some time pressure with this acquisition. Any delays could affect the entire transaction, which impacts all current and former employees." There it was, the threat wrapped in corporate speak. "Sign our papers, or everyone suffers." "I understand," I said. "My attorney will be in touch." I hung up and immediately called Jessica Harper, the patent lawyer Anthony had recommended 3 years ago when TechFlow tried to claim ownership of some side projects I'd done. Jessica was sharp, specialized in IP disputes, and didn't take garbage from corporate bullies. "Jordan, good to hear from you. Anthony called me this morning. He filled me in on the situation. First rule, do not sign anything. Do not answer your door. Do not reply to any emails from TechFlow or their lawyers. They're already calling. Of course they are. They're panicking. Do you understand what you have here? You're not just a former employee with a grievance. You're the owner of the technology that makes their acquisition valuable. Without your patent, they're selling an empty shell. So what do? We wait. Scott Patterson is bleeding time and money every day this deal stays stalled. His stock options are worthless if there's no deal. His investors are asking hard questions. He'll try to buy you off first. Then he'll try to intimidate you. When both of those fail, he'll get desperate. And then? Then we negotiate from a position of strength. But Jordan, I need to ask, what do you want out of this? A settlement? Licensing fees? Or do you want to watch the whole company burn? I thought about that for a minute. 18 years of my life in that place. All the late nights fixing their mistakes. All the times I covered for incompetent managers. The way they treated experienced engineers like we were disposable. I want Scott Patterson to understand that experience matters, I said, and I want my team protected. Your team? The engineers, the people who actually build things. If this deal falls apart, they'll be the ones who suffer. Scott and his executive buddies have golden parachutes. The developers will just get laid off. Jessica was quiet for a moment. That's going to complicate things, but it's not impossible. Let me think about this. The formal letter arrived by courier that afternoon. Heavy cream paper, embossed letterhead. Very impressive. Very expensive. Very threatening. Dear Mr. Mitchell, we represent TechFlow Systems, Inc. regarding patent number 8,532,991. Our review indicates this patent should have been assigned to TechFlow under your employment agreement. We require immediate assignment of all rights to ensure the pending acquisition proceeds without delay. Failure to comply may result in legal action for breach of contract and tortious interference with business relations. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Jessica. She called back 10 minutes later. They're bluffing. If they had a solid claim to the patent, they wouldn't be threatening you. They'd just file the assignment paperwork. This is pure intimidation. So what now? Now we send them a response that lets them know they're dealing with someone who understands the game. I'm drafting a letter that will make their legal team very nervous. What does it say? That you're aware of your rights, you're represented by counsel, and any further harassment will result in sanctions. It also mentions that you're considering all options regarding the patent, including licensing to alternative parties. Alternative parties? Vortex Solutions. The buyer. What if they decided to skip TechFlow entirely and just license the technology directly from you? That thought hadn't occurred to me. But it made perfect sense. Why buy the whole company when you could just buy the part that actually worked? Scott Patterson was about to have a very bad week. Scott tried the personal approach first. My phone rang Thursday morning while I was drinking coffee and reading Jessica's response letter to TechFlow's lawyers. The caller ID said Scott Patterson. I almost didn't answer, but I was curious to hear how he'd play this. Jordan. Hey, buddy. That fake friendly voice he used in company meetings right before announcing layoffs. Look, I heard there's some confusion about old paperwork. Nothing we can't sort out between friends. We're not friends, Scott? Come on, don't be like that. You know how much I respect what you built at TechFlow. That's exactly why I want to make this right. I'm thinking generous severance package, stellar recommendation letter, maybe even bring you back as a consultant for the transition. He was trying to sound casual, but I could hear the stress underneath. His golden boy act was slipping. What kind of severance? I asked, just to see how desperate he was. 6-month salary, full benefits extension, and I'll personally write you a recommendation that'll get you hired anywhere in the valley. 6-month salary for a patent that enabled a $280 million acquisition. He thought I was that cheap. Scott, this call is being recorded for legal documentation purposes. Dead silence on the other end. Do not contact me directly again, I continued. My attorney Jessica Harper will handle all future communications regarding my intellectual property. Wait, Jordan, hang on. The friendly mask dropped completely. You don't need lawyers. We can work this out. That patent should have been assigned to TechFlow years ago. You know that. It's our technology. Actually, it's my technology. Built on my personal computer on my own time before I was your employee. Check the dates on your contracts. You're making a huge mistake. His voice was getting tight. Angry. If you hold up this deal, I will bury you in litigation. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. More threats, also recorded. Have a good day, Scott. I hung up and immediately called Jessica. He took the bait, I told her. Called me directly, made threats, admitted they think they should own the patent. Perfect. I'll add that to our file. How are you holding up? I'm fine. 6 years in the Air Force teaches you how to deal with bullies. Good. Because it's going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. The retaliation started that afternoon. First came an email from TechFlow's IT department claiming I still had company property, a laptop they'd written off 3 years ago, but suddenly they needed it back for security compliance. Pure harassment. Then HR sent a letter saying my possession of proprietary development artifacts violated my employment agreement. They were trying to frame my ownership of my own code as theft. Jessica shut both down with cease and desist letters that made their lawyers back off fast. But Scott's nastiest move came through Kevin. My phone rang at 6 p.m., Kevin's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but the kid had always been straight with me. Jordan. His voice was shaky, like he was hiding in a bathroom stall. Scott came down to the engineering floor today. He was really intense. Asked if anyone had personal contact with you. Here it came. Scott was weaponizing my own team against me. He said the deal might fall through because of legal complications with the legacy code. Said if that happens, the whole department gets laid off. Everyone's freaking out. Kevin, listen to me carefully. Scott is lying to you. The deal isn't falling apart because of me. It's falling apart because he tried to sell something he doesn't own. I know, Kevin whispered. But people are scared. They're saying you're holding the company hostage. That hurt worse than Scott's threats. These were people I'd trained, mentored, covered for when they made mistakes. Now they thought I was the villain. Kevin, I need you to understand something. I didn't steal anything. I saved something. That adaptive load distribution code? I wrote it before I even worked there full-time. I own it legally, fair and square. But why didn't you assign it to TechFlow? Because nobody asked. They just assumed they owned everything I touched. For 18 years, I gave them my best work, stayed late, fixing their problems, never complained when they took credit for my ideas. Then they fired me via email to clean up their balance sheet for this merger. So what happens now? I'm going to make sure the team is protected. Whatever happens with this deal, you guys aren't going to get screwed over. Can you really do that? Kevin, I own the technology that makes this company valuable. That gives me some leverage. I'm not going to waste it on revenge. I'm going to use it to take care of the people who actually build things. Scott said you're bitter about getting laid off. I am bitter. But not at you guys. At him. At a system that treats experienced engineers like we're obsolete. At a culture that thinks 22-year-old MBAs know more about technology than people who've been building it for decades. There was a long pause. Jordan, there's something else. Word is that Vortex Solutions is asking questions about the engineering team, like they're thinking about hiring people directly. That was interesting. Maybe Vortex was already considering their options. If they call you, Kevin, be honest about your skills and experience. Don't worry about TechFlow politics. Just represent yourself professionally. Are you talking to Vortex? I can't discuss ongoing negotiations. But Kevin, start updating your resume. All of you. Whatever happens with this deal, things are going to change fast. After I hung up, I poured another cup of coffee and thought about the situation. Scott was bleeding from multiple wounds now. His acquisition was stalled. His legal team couldn't intimidate me. His attempt at personal persuasion had failed. Now he was desperate enough to turn his own employees against me. But that desperation was going to be his downfall. Desperate people make mistakes. They get sloppy. They overreach. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Vortex wants to meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Are you ready for this? I typed back. Ready. Time to end this thing. Scott Patterson was about to learn that you don't win wars by attacking civilians. You win by going straight for the command center. The Vortex Solutions headquarters was a glass tower in downtown San Francisco. Intimidating lobby, expensive everything. But walking through those doors Friday morning with Jessica beside me, I didn't feel intimidated. I felt like a 49-year-old Air Force veteran with 18 years of corporate battle scars and the deed to a technology empire. The conference room on the 32nd floor was set up like a tribunal. Long walnut table, leather chairs, windows overlooking the bay. At the head sat Brian Walsh, Vortex's general counsel. Silver hair, sharp eyes that had seen every corporate maneuver in the book. And sitting next to him, looking like he hadn't slept in days, was Scott Patterson. Scott's usual Navy suit was wrinkled. His tie wasn't quite straight. The golden boy facade was cracking under pressure. When he saw me walk in, he actually flinched. Jordan, Scott said, standing too quickly. I didn't realize this was going to be a joint meeting. Sit down, Mr. Patterson, Walsh said quietly. Scott sat. Walsh looked at me and Jessica. Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Harper, thank you for coming. As you know, Vortex is finalizing the acquisition of TechFlow Systems. However, the patent ownership question has created complications. There's no complication, Scott interrupted. This is a disgruntled former employee trying to leverage a paperwork error into a payday. We have comprehensive IP assignment clauses in all our employment contracts. Jessica slid a document across the table. That's Mr. Mitchell's original freelance agreement from 7 years ago. Section 4, subsection C, states that any intellectual property created by the contractor on personal equipment outside billable hours remains contractor property until formally assigned. She paused, looking directly at Scott. Mr. Mitchell wrote the adaptive load distribution logic on his personal laptop during a weekend, 3 days before his full-time employment began. He filed patent number 8,532,991 in his own name. TechFlow never requested assignment of the patent, never paid for assignment, never even acknowledged it existed. Walsh picked up the document, read it carefully, nodded. He looked at Scott. Is this accurate? It's a technicality, Scott said, sweat visible on his forehead. The spirit of the agreement was that all development work belonged to TechFlow. She worked in our office, used our resources. Actually, I worked from home that weekend because the office computers were garbage, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken, and my voice cut through the room clearly. And the spirit of the law doesn't matter in federal court. Scott turned to face me, his eyes desperate. Jordan, please. Think about Kevin and the rest of the team. If this deal falls through, everyone loses their jobs. 47 people, Jordan. Good people. People you trained. Same playbook. Hide behind the employees he treated like spreadsheet entries. Don't you dare talk about my team, I said, keeping my voice steady. I spent 18 years protecting those people from your bad decisions. I stayed late fixing the messes you created. I covered for your incompetence more times than I can count. And when you thought you didn't need me anymore, when you wanted to clean up the books for this merger, you fired me with an email. It was just business, Scott pleaded. This isn't personal either, I said. It's business, my business. I turned to Walsh. Mr. Walsh, I'm not willing to assign this patent to TechFlow Systems, not for any amount of money. However, I am willing to license the technology directly to Vortex Solutions. Scott went pale. He realized what was happening. I wasn't just blocking his deal. I was cutting him out entirely. Exclusive licensing rights, I continued. You get the patent, you get the architecture documentation, and I'll personally oversee the technical integration. You don't need TechFlow's shell company. You just need the technology and the people who understand it. This is interference with contract, Scott said, his voice cracking. I have investors, board obligations. Actually, Jessica said with a professional smile, it's the free market. You can't sell what you don't own. Walsh checked his watch. Mr. Patterson, I think we're finished here. Vortex is formally withdrawing our acquisition offer for TechFlow Systems. We'll be negotiating directly with Mr. Mitchell for technology licensing. Scott looked at me one last time. His eyes showed pure panic. He was watching his career implode in real time. You're destroying everything, he whispered. No, Scott, I said calmly. I'm just cleaning up your mess. Security escorted Scott out. The room got quiet after the door closed. Well, Walsh said, that was clarifying. Now, Mr. Mitchell, let's discuss terms. The licensing agreement took 3 days to finalize. The money was more than I'd made in my entire career. But the best part was Clause 8. Vortex agreed to offer employment to TechFlow's entire engineering staff at 8% salary increases, with full benefits starting immediately. I saved my team. The headlines were brutal. TechFlow deal collapses. CEO ousted amid patent scandal. From startup darling to corporate disaster. The Scott Patterson story. Scott was fired by his own board before the weekend. Word was he faced SEC investigation for misrepresenting company assets during the merger talks. His LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight. Kevin called me the next Tuesday. Jordan, Vortex offered me a senior developer position. 8% raise, better benefits, and they want to implement proper mentorship programs. They said you recommended it. You earned it, Kevin. All of you did. Scott's gone. Board cleaned house completely. The whole executive team. Good. Jordan, thank you for protecting us. I'm writing this from my new office at Vortex Solutions. Real windows, view of the bay. My laptop's open, terminal window blinking, ready to build something better. The voicemail from Scott came last week. Voice broken. Desperate. Jordan, I lost everything. Maybe we can work something out? I know the technology too, right? Just call me. I deleted it without responding. The tech industry loves to talk about disruption, innovation, moving fast and breaking things. But they forget that while they're busy breaking things, some of us have been quietly building the foundations they stand on. Experience isn't obsolete. It's the bedrock that keeps everything else from collapsing when the latest trend fails.